Ska Keller, hello.
Hello,
Thank you for coming
me.
to our series of interviews with European personalities and MEPs, a series that will go until the European elections and maybe afterwards as well. You are the former, let's say, candidate of the ecologists for the function of chief of the European Commission. You were in that epical debate with two gentlemen in suits and ties, and you didn't make it. And now you are still one of the main major figures of the European ecologists. So I will ask you first, what is your attitude towards the great demonstrations, manifestations of the farmers and workers in agriculture, given that your party is in power in Berlin, and for the first time in known history, farmers are protesting against you?
You're referring to the farmers' protests in Germany, indeed.
In Germany, in Europe, in France.
Well, I think there's always also different aspects. I think in any case, it's difficult to say all farmers will think like this. I think there's also some differences among them, but that's of course for them to discuss. But I can relate to the farmers' protests in Germany, which had a spark, which was reduction of subsidies for them. But I do think it has also, as I understand from the farmers, it has underlying issues that they don't see their role valued enough in society, because indeed they're producing the food that we eat every day. They have to live off subsidies instead of being able to live off the product that they make. And there's a lot of new rules, and consumers expect a lot of things. You know, they want healthy food, organic food, they want animal welfare, and all of that, of course, I support as well. But the question is, what are the expectations of society?
Too much paperwork as well.
They complain also about paperwork, indeed. So I understand that general feeling. I also actually understand the anger about the subsidies, because that was a problem that came clear when we had a court judgment that no one was really expecting, cutting quite a number of the German budget. And then the finance minister saying, no, we will not make any new debt, because, you know, we have the liberals in government. They absolutely don't want to make any debt. And that was creating a problem, because you have to take the money from somewhere.
So just to go step by step, you are part of the coalition.
The Greens
Berlin,
are part of the German government.
And you hold the job of, not you personally, but your party, foreign minister.
Yes.
And you understand the protesters, you say. If they get violent, will you send the police?
Of course, there's certain rules that any protester has to follow, and we already saw some incidences where those common rules that are laws were not followed. And as anyone, if you are not following the law, there needs to be consequences, because it's also not okay if people are threatening other people, like as happened in specific cases. So there's rules for everyone, and they need to be followed by everyone. But of course, there's also the right for a peaceful protest, and that happens, and that's perfectly okay. And I think it's important to also look at what are the underlying reasons and what can we do to come together again.
You German Greens are a strange species for Eastern Europeans. For example, you are in favor, more than the socialists of Mr. Scholz, you are in favor of continuing the war effort, the help for Ukraine. So this seems to go against the pacifist, the peaceful nature of the ecologists. How do you explain that to people in Eastern Europe?
In the sense that we obviously are against war. We will never want to start any war. The problem is just that we have a situation where one country, Russia, invaded another one. And you always have the right to self-defense. And we need to, I think we do need to help the Ukraine in order to do this self-defense. They were attacked without any reason, if there's anything that can be a reason for being invaded. So we do need to support Ukraine. They did not start a war. They did not want a war. They were attacked. And it's absolutely a nation's right to attack themselves, to defend themselves against an attacker.
So you are in favor of law and order, you are in favor of helping Ukraine. How do you explain, as a German Green, that Greens are not so successful in some countries in Eastern Europe, like Romania, for instance? When you think of the fact that Bulgarians started protesting against communism through an ecological party in the 80s, the absence of the Greens in countries like Romania and Bulgaria is surprising today. How do you explain that?
They are in Bulgaria. We're even government in Bulgaria.
In Romania, they practically do not exist.
Yes, we have a very good member of the European Parliament from Romania, who's Nicu Stefanuța, and he's great, and he represents the ecological movement basically from Romania in the European Parliament. He's a great colleague in our group. And we do see ecological movements. Also in Romania, for example, there was the gold mine, the protest against the gold mine in Roșia Montana, and I'm very sorry for mispronunciation.
No,
right now, there's a big controversy about air quality. So people see how ecological issues are affecting their lives. But I mean, you're absolutely right that in many Eastern European countries, we have been struggling. Same, for example, in Eastern Germany, where I'm from, where we struggled a lot and we're still struggling. But we are making progress. In Poland, for example, we're now also part of the government. So we're starting small, but we're growing. And for us, it's also very important to not just say, oh, we're for the environment. We see the big connection that there is between the environment and the social, because usually it's poorer people who suffer from the worst air quality, who do not have access to, I don't know, clean water, clean heating, or organic food and all those niceties. And it's a question of equality in society to have a clean environment, let's say, for everyone.
Would you say that this apparent lack of appeal of the Greens in Eastern Europe is also maybe due to the insistence on the rights of some minorities like LGBT, and because societies are very conservative there, and the message doesn't get through?
I think we see some changes. There were some referendums, some law changes, and I think it's very important to stand up for the rights of minorities, because there's people who have been unseen in our societies, who have been discriminated against. And if we want to stand up for human rights, then it's important that we do that for the human rights of everyone, including those minorities who have been discriminated against all the time. So I do think that that's important, and I think there's also a growing part in the society of Eastern European countries that will agree with that. And I do also think that, I mean, sure, we lack as Greens representation often in Eastern European countries, but I also think that people certainly are looking for a party that has its values and that stands for something, even if they might not agree. But if we were just a party looking, oh, what's popular, it wouldn't be us.
Since you know these countries so well, Romania, Bulgaria, and thank you for setting the clock right about the ecologists in the coalition, because some of us are still fixed in the Boyko Borisov era. Would you say that the Commission and the EU institutions were right to lift that mechanism of surveillance on the justice in Romania and Bulgaria, the MCV mechanism?
I think it's important to have a close look always at member states. That also includes, by the way, all the other member states. I mean, there were some specific issues in Romania and Bulgaria, and I'm not the expert to tell you now, oh, everything has been solved here and there. But I do think within the European Union, we need to make sure that we're not just looking at candidate countries. You know, when they come in, we are scrutinizing very carefully. And then once they become members, we're not looking anymore.
You are hinting at Hungary.
I'm hinting at Hungary a bit, yeah, which also, because then once they're a member state like Hungary, then you don't have any leverage anymore. And that needs to change. And that's also what
there is no mechanism for exclusion.
Well, in theory, there is all sorts of mechanisms. And in the parliament, we've been working on the judiciary scoreboard and things. So nowadays, we have developed mechanisms. But obviously, we need to develop them further. And I do think that we need to always watch out what's happening in each and every member state, definitely.
How about the present government? These people like Ciolacu and the socialists in power. You were vocal during Dragnea time, if you remember, and suddenly the EU seems to have gone soft on Romania.
Well, again, I cannot tell you about any specificities because that's not my role. It's nothing I'm working on at the moment. But we always, as Greens, want a tough language by the Commission on pointing out also faults that they see. There is, of course, always a line between a communication, like staying in conversation and trying to make things better together. But there's also a moment when that's not working anymore. If that's not working, that it needs to stop. And the Commission has some tools in their hand. The current Commission, I feel, is a bit soft. I think understand that a bit. They don't want to be too in the sense offensive, maybe in a way. They want to keep a conversation going. I understand that, but I also think at some point you have to say, okay, enough is enough, and we need to act. And there, I would, in general, now again, would be happy if the Commission was a bit stronger on that. Okay,
and how about Schengen? Romania and Bulgaria, Schengen?
We were always in favor of Schengen and Bulgaria joining.
Do you think they are ready? Do you think they are ready?
When I worked on that topic some years ago, they were ready. Mm-hmm. You can always say, oh, we found some new problems. Back then it was like, yeah, they fulfill all the Schengen rules, but there's too much corruption. But that's not part of the rules. And corruption is a problem and it needs to be addressed. But if we have set ourselves rules for something, like who gets access to the Schengen area, then I think we need to follow those rules. And Bulgaria and Romania back then were ready to join. So we're still lacking some of the access to Schengen. Right now it's the air borders that are mainly open, which is important. But I do think we need to move on the land borders as well.
You mentioned Roșia Montana, which you pronounced very well.
Thank you.
At that time, there was also the case of the discovery of shale gas in the Romanian Moldova, and there were huge protests against the exploitation, against the fracking system of extracting. And at that time, someone so high like the former NATO Secretary General Rasmussen intervened and said that these protests are organized by Russia, which has an interest of selling oil to Romania, to the whole of Europe. And you come from a country that became practically too dependent on Russian gas because of the former Chancellor Schröder, who became one of the chiefs of the board of directors of Gazprom. A very bad example for Europe and for your country. Indeed. What do you think of this explanation of those protests in Romania, like they were organized by Russia to stop Romania from becoming autonomous in terms of energy?
I cannot tell you if they were. I have no idea if they were organized by Russia or not. I can tell you about the...
Tell me about Schröder.
About Schröder. Even though we have to also not let Merkel off the hook, because she continued that policy. So we had several governments in a row that were saying, oh, let's buy cheap gas from Russia, which was a huge mistake.
Closing the atomic plants, the nuclear plants.
That's not necessarily related. It's related, of course, in the energy mix. But, I mean, we as Greens were the only, if I remember correctly, political force who've been saying, no, we cannot just make ourselves dependent on Russia. We need to invest in renewables, which we're now doing, finally, since we're a part of the government. And we've been doing very well right now without nuclear. I mean, they've been closed down. And and without Russian gas, so it's working. But it would have been much nicer, easier, if we wouldn't have let the country get in such dependence of Russian gas. That was a big political mistake, which we've been paying for. I mean, really, thankfully, we've been going through this crisis easily, and we have managed to get through 2 winters in a row without...
So you would say that nuclear energy is green energy?
No, I did not say that.
Okay.
And it's not green, because while you might say, oh, there is no CO2 emission while it's running, to extract the uranium is very CO2 intensive. It's a very unsafe thing. No one knows what to do with the waste of it. No one knows. And we're leaving that for generations to come.
France is heavily dependent on that.
Yes, and we don't agree with that as Greens in France and elsewhere. So we should use that, what we know how to use, which is safe to use, and where we don't end up with that problem of the big waste, which is renewable energy, solar, but also thermal, and all of those things which we're now more and more starting to use, also because of the lack of cheap gas supply. But it's something we should have invested in a long time ago.
Okay, the final point would be the European elections in slightly more than 4 months. The Chancellor, Olaf Scholz, said that the present demonstrations of the farmers in Germany could be exploited by the Alternative für Deutschland and by other parties of the far right, even neo-Nazis. We've seen in France, the Rassemblement National taking advantage of the same protests of the farmers. What's your prediction? Would you say that there is a real risk, a real danger of the far right getting more and more ground before the or in the going towards the elections?
There is a real danger, definitely, and we all have to think about what that means for us together as Europe, but also for the individuals, because the far right, they're attacking the individual rights of each and every one of us, no matter where. They're attacking our well-being, economical well-being. They're also attacking our freedoms, and that's very worrying. At the same time, now in Germany, for several weeks, we had huge protests against the far right, and that is so amazing to see. We don't only have them in big cities, we also have them in small villages in Eastern Germany, where I've been, for example, in one of those demonstrations in a small village, and there's hundreds of people coming. And that shows that there's also a big movement against that. I think it's time to speak up, because it's not a natural catastrophe that the far right is becoming stronger. If we don't let them become stronger, they will not. If all of us go out to vote and vote for democratic parties that represent our interests best, if we make sure that someone opposes them when they're saying racist things in public, then they will not win. But it's democracy that will win. And I think our idea of the European Union together, that we work together to enhance our well-being in a peaceful manner by talking to each other, by arguing, yes, by finding majorities and compromises. That's the way to go forward, and not by singling out minorities or groups of people. And I hope that the European elections will show that the democratic movement in the European Union is very strong.
So final point, will the next European Parliament be very different from this one?
Well, we'll have to see.
In terms of composition of...
Well, it's been we'll have to see. It's an election and no one knows what's going to happen, but I do hope that as many people as possible will go out to vote, and that everyone votes for the Democratic Party that they feel represents them best.
Ska Keller, thank you.
Thank you very much.
We've been talking today with Franziska Keller from the European Greens and the German Grüne. Thank you.
Thank you.